Hey, and welcome once again to What's the Damage companion show to the incredibly well-known and popular real play D&D show Roll for Damage, just like Mama used to make. So on Friday, the Shields finally got a little bit of R&R with a girls' night, sort of, plus Ball, plus Sinric. We're also there in the girls' night doing the girls' things. I'm not sure what I called it, a girls' night. It was obviously like a unisex event. But anyway, they went shopping. They went to the opera to get some culture. It was very fun. Oriana had a hot date with somebody quite important. And everyone got a chance to dress up. There's so few opportunities in life to dress up, you really gotta seize them whenever you can. Especially if you spend a lot of time in sewers and dungeons and things like that. But I'm getting off topic. So anyway, everyone went to the opera. Camping got some study time. Quinn had somewhat less fun as he had a very important meeting with Lex. A very serious conversation was had, and a very serious question was asked about the future of the Shields and Lux Eterna, their future, their little partnership thing. Some things to ponder, and you can ponder them along with us starting in just a moment. As always, stick around after the stream for links, charities, resources. I'm your host, Truth Venson, and this is What's the Damage? Welcome back. I've got two very exciting guests for you today. We have got Serenity, our favorite DM, regular on the show. She's actually always, just sometimes we can't see her. And then we've got Tick, who plays Sinric. Hope you guys are doing well. So, this episode we had a dress up montage. There was an opera. There's a solemn moment with Quinn. What is the damage?
I mean, what isn't the damage
I
at
don't think
all
you
times?
guys didn't
Split
get beat up at
ends.
all.
My God. You don't understand what dungeoneering does to hair?
Not good
I
for
mean,
you.
we got our nails done, but no one got their hair done. I mean, that's next
One got their
episode.
hair did. Yeah, what does everyone's hair look like? You must all like. When was the last time anyone had a haircut in the group? You're all look like mountain men.
If I remember correctly, I did buy hair cutting supplies
But
in
did
one
you
of the
use
cities we
them?
were in.
Not
I
yet.
thought it was like
No.
food. I mean, I thought that was like unspoken.
Hmm.
But,
I
hey,
choose to believe you all have like super long hair. It's like down to everyone's elbows.
I had long hair to begin with, though.
Well, there you go. It's down to like Cindric has this long, flowing mane,
Silver
like, down to
hair.
his butt. Yeah, it flows in the wind
Yeah.
like a majestic stallion. Anyway, so sorry, the reason I wanted to have you on this week, or one of the reasons,
You don't have a choice.
No, I enjoy your company. No, so I want to talk about the new song because I got a little bit of a preview before
did?
the rest of the players got to see it, and you were so excited about it. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk about it in a little bit more depth, and also get the reaction from the one player that we have.
Yeah. I mean, it was just something fun. Like, I don't know. I always have these like wacky random ideas for like art or doing something. And this one was, I was like, it would be really nice. Like we've had a lot of great music. Spencer has been the main musician and composer for most of our themes for our intros and our break music and stuff like that. Even for our one shot, he did amazing music. But it's all been instrumental, and like there's just something extra when you have like vocals and you have like taglines and you have like catchy, chorus or something like that. And so I wanted to do that, and I wanted to have something that was like pop rocky. And so I normally commission Vorpal Lance for all of the environmental music that I've recently been using when I don't use like stuff from like Darkest Dungeon or The Witcher or something like that. And want to have it more, tailored to the game. And so I just sent him a request, and I was like, hey, I want to do a new theme. I'm going to do vocals to it. I'm going to write lyrics to it. So here's like my little notes on like what I'm looking for. He like went off, and like I think like a day or two later he came back with this really cool melody and composition, and there was a little bit of tweaking that needed to happen because I was like, well, I want to have like, here's like the structure of the song and what I kind of want to do. He gave it to me, and then I went off, and like the next day like once he gave it to me, I think a couple of more days later, I ran with it and like wrote lyrics in like 4 hours or something like that, and then did like a little tagline vocal myself and sent it off to the vocalist. And I really wanted it to be done by a vocalist because I can't make harmonies and like vocals that sound like that. I can sing a little bit, but like to do all the extra stuff that professionals know how to do with like mixing their vocals and everything like that, I just wanted this to sound super epic. And I was really happy with the final product. So
awesome. Do you think it's super epic, Tick?
Well, the funny thing is, when it debuted, my stream died like 2 seconds into it starting. So I didn't get to hear it during the course of the episode, but I went back and listened to it. And yeah, it's catchy. It's awesome. And it feels more official once you're a part of something that has an intro song, if that makes sense.
Yeah. When I first heard it, I thought it sounded kind of like, I got two things. The first thing I got, which I told Serenity, was Schoolhouse Rock. And the second thing was it reminded me of like the old like long intros they used to do for kids cartoons, because they used to have like a whole ass song right in front of the cartoons. Now they just have like a couple of notes or whatever. It's very minimal. But it kind of reminded me of that too.
Like the 2.5-minute Gummy Bear song at the beginning of every single episode.
Yeah, or like the really lengthy Care Bears song, or the theme to Gargoyles or something like that.
Yeah, and I wanted to have like a long and a short, because I wanted there to be like like, I don't know if you've ever like listened to like any intro of like a cartoon or an anime or something like that. There's always like the 1.5-minute version that shows at the beginning of every episode where they have like the opening credits, and then there's then if you actually go and like find the soundtrack, there's like the long version, which is like the full song sung with like the full set of lyrics and whatever. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have the mixed version cut down with just like the 1.5-minute that we would show for every session of Roll for Damage going forward, because 3 minutes, it's a fairly long time to listen to a song, as catchy as it is. But like, I wanted to have that, and then still have the long version for those who want to like listen to it and bop along or whatever, and have like an actual official sort of theme. So
exactly. I mean, it's catchy. It's awesome. I mean, and like I said, it makes everything we're doing feel more official.
Yay! We're a real stream. Lovely. Okay, and then let's talk about the actual episode, because some fun stuff happened. So I feel like Sinric keeps getting dragged along to like shopping trips and stuff. How does this keep happening? Because I feel like he's never literally holding the bags, but spiritually he's holding the bags, and for Beltane, usually.
It's just that energy where everyone in our group just wants to go, shopping and have like sprees. And I would rather sit on a bank and do some fishing, or sit in,
Mhm.
a spa somewhere, like one of those bathhouses or something, and just, enjoy or relax instead
Yeah.
of, we're gonna have a down day by being as active as possible.
But you did get a spa day this time.
Yeah, true. It was
Mhm.
it was a true spa day, but that's not what I meant. I meant like
Yeah.
bathhouse.
Yeah, I think there are really two kinds of people when it comes to days off. Either you have like a 6 item itinerary planned, so you're going to be extremely active on your day off, or you're the kind of person who's like, I want to sit in one place and do one thing all day. Yeah, me too. I
Couch
like
potato, yeah.
I like sitting in one place. I mean, you can also go outside and sit there, go fishing or
Yeah,
something.
I got some rocking chairs on my
But I
back
feel like
porch. I
Sinric
mean,
secretly though, like kind of enjoys it. Because like he bought that, he was the one who went to that
Mhm.
fancy dress shop to get
yeah,
like
yeah,
those
that's
the
true.
fancy hat and robes, and he did
Oh yeah,
not
the
seem
haberdashery.
oh, I don't want to be doing, like he seemed genuinely like
Mhm.
You
interested.
know,
And like even the spa day, like he could have chosen to like go to a bar and just like sat and drank, but he like, I think he like low key was like, yeah, a nice like massage, some
Mhm.
rubbing on my calves and make sure like my
Some
feet
hot
are
rocks.
nice, and
Yeah,
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 you got to be
yeah.
spry. I
gotta
was
be
going to use that as an
spry.
opportunity to try and do a backflip now that I got, advantage on athletics, but it just never came up.
Oh,
Oh,
next time.
sad. There'll be
I
other
figured
opportunities for
my luck,
backflips,
I'd roll a
probably.
double nat one and, face plant right there.
Oh, you're back.
Memories.
Oh, I'm so old.
Oh no. Yeah, I think
Which
if
I
you
think
double
is
nap
hilarious.
one, yeah, I think if you double nap one, you like break a rib or something. Oh
Next
Lordy.
4 weeks, we're in the hospital.
Yeah, if
What's
a
the
kid
medical insurance like here for adventurers?
Yeah.
really bad, you're all
Yeah.
independent contractors. Um, Lovely. A little bit political humor for you folks at home. Anyway, about the opera though, because you guys did go and actually see Oriana's mom sing. I wanted to ask Serenity. So did you have like a whole show planned out in case they did manage to make it to the opera, or were you like mostly
It just
improvising all that?
was made up in my head. I was like debating on first of all, I didn't know honestly like exactly if the whole group was going, if it was just going to be an Oriana thing. I also didn't want to like I was debating on, oh, should I find some like opera music to like use, or like
Mm-hmm.
something like that, but then also you get kind of like get like DMCA'd when you put the VODs online and stuff like that for that kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, I mean, I'm gonna have to think up something, but I wasn't sure how, if it was going to be the whole group, if it was just going to be Oriana, how much
Mm-hmm.
detail I was going to have to go into. And so I was like, nah, I'll just like, I'm sure I can think up. I've seen enough musicals. I can think up the
Mm-hmm.
tagline to enough musicals and add my own flair into it to make something that would sound fairly interesting. And most operas are have like fairly like roller coasterish stories, either that or like they're
Mm-hmm.
horrible tragedies in opera form.
Yeah,
Um,
mostly everyone dies.
yeah.
Or both.
Yeah. So like I was just like, yeah, I'll just make something up and have them have a good time, and kind of leave it to them to ask any questions. They didn't really. They just kind of like enjoyed,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it easy for me as well. But I always like to like leave it sort of open because I don't know what specifically they're going to engage with when they go to these like
Mm-hmm.
random, not specific, like investigating a murder or investigating this dungeon or doing something. So I like to leave it more open to them to kind of like decide what they want to do.
I mean, downtime can always be a little bit awkward because it's like, what do we do? Because we don't have a goal in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's downtime for a reason. Sometimes you just need to decompress a little, even as a character.
Yeah, like we talked about in our beach episode.
Yeah.
Episode.
So I leave it open for people like RP do what they need to do, but then
Mm-hmm.
I'll move it along if it feels like the group has like had their moment or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. So what did Sinric think about the opera? Was it nice for him to have a bit of downtime, like a nice, quiet, more or less quiet evening with no zombies or sewers?
I mean, opera's not bad. It's a place. I mean, it's probably, not the first thing I would have wanted. Like, I was debating on
Mhm.
it. It's like, do I roll to see if I fall asleep? because I feel like that would be a concern. But, other than that, it's nice to just not have to worry about like turning around and dying.
Mm-hmm.
And you got the bar hop afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, we hopped to one bar.
That's true.
Yeah,
We spent our alcohol budget at the opera.
right.
That's true.
Because you all got very expensive beers. Theaters will gouge you, and it's always like too awkward to say anything. I once spent like $40 on a gin and tonic at a theater
It's
in New York.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. I didn't realize it was going to be that expensive, but he didn't tell me the price until he finished pouring. And I was like, well, I'm stuck now.
Yeah.
Lord. Yeah.
You're committed.
I'm committed. You poured it. Yes, I have to buy it. Yeah. So
I will say I was kind of hoping that Campion would make it there in time, but I mean, that way we'd have group all together type deal.
I mean, the way that Jay was playing him, he was kind of doing his own thing and like figuring out. I was trying to give him the opportunity. I was like, okay, so where does Campion go? And he was like, nah, he's just gonna walk around and chill and do his own thing and eat some street meat and learn more about the city. And I was like, okay.
I think that's actually part of the issue as to what we're going to be going into next, though. I mean, just the behavior like that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Well, the conversation that came up afterwards when we're all discussing on what our options are, his kind of standoffishness to say yes or no exactly to the situation, as opposed to whether or not we're going to be with Lex in the group.
Okay.
So
he was sort of the only standout, which I was surprised by actually, because several members of the group have expressed frustration with Lex Eterna, including
he wasn't
Cedric.
a standout. Yeah, but he wasn't a standout about it. He was literally just yes or no. I really don't care. I'll just do whatever. So I mean, it wasn't really a standoff. It was more like I'm completely indifferent to the situation.
I didn't get that impression.
I think he said like he doesn't trust. He thinks they're going to.
He expressed
to get you guys killed.
He said.
Yeah.
He expressed doubts. He might be right. He expressed doubts. And then I remember he said, I'll do whatever the group does.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're looking on track record, I'm more dangerous to the group than Lex Eterna.
That's true. Actually, I think you've killed more party members than Lex Eterna has.
It's not on purpose, but it's kind of fun.
Wait, has Lex killed any party members?
No.
I don't think they have.
No,
yeah.
They haven't. That's why I'm saying he's beating them, and I think I don't think Lex Eterna has. They did make one person go unconscious, but that was to stop the ghost.
That's fine. That's a friendly little punch in the head.
But I think Cynric has caused more unconsciousness and more death than pretty much than actually most enemies they fought. Most enemies is like once. He's done it like multiple times.
Just like interesting. I mean, that should probably be a point of conversation before we talk to Lex and Co again.
Yeah. Man, yeah, the real threat all along is Cynric.
I mean,
the deadliest enemy.
You need to get one of those, one of the metal hats.
Mm-hmm.
There you go, the tinfoil hat.
Yeah, the tinfoil hat. Yeah.
Check your little Cynric brain. Okay.
It is kind of interesting though, the fact that a lot of us have expressed disdain with them, but I mean, the way I look at it in characters, you can express disdain with someone and still be able to work with them. Just now, to handle the situation differently. I mean, it's not. Yeah.
I guess.
I mean,
I'd say disdain. I don't think I'd work well with anyone I disdain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a strong word.
It is.
But I think I know what you mean.
I mean, like my whole gripe with Erin was I feel that she's a poor leader. It wasn't that she sent us to die. It was the fact that I legit feel like she was a poor leader, and that she withheld information that could have potentially gotten people killed. I mean, it's not to say that my character would never work with again, never talk to her again. No, absolutely not.
Maybe not trust her that much.
Oh, no, I had no problem trusting her, but also
you just said she was
approach the situation that if she tells us to do something, I'm going to assume there's more to it now.
That's mistrust, is that not?
I mean, I look at mistrust as, and if you tell me the sky is red, I'm going to say, no, it's not. Whereas if I trust you, I'd say, sure, it is.
No, I mean, sorry, but like if somebody tells you this guy is red and you don't believe them, you look up and you just said that if Aaron tells you something, you're not going to believe that's all it is.
No, I'm going to believe that there's more to it than what was just
Yeah.
told.
So mistrust.
See, I don't look at that as mistrust. I look at that as hiding. They're hiding information. So in that regard, my fear would be
Serenity, break
along
me
the
up.
lines
Is
of
that not
champion.
mistrust?
I mean, I get where Tick
I'm
is
splitting
coming from.
hairs.
I don't. Well, I don't know honestly if it's considered mistrust, but it's more like not being fully bought in to because I would say like a mistrust is you wouldn't want to go anywhere with this person because you physically don't trust them to like to keep their word or to have sound judgment or whatever. I feel like it's less mistrust and more sort of like wariness. I do think it's on the cusp of like mistrust, but I don't think it's like full like we don't trust this person to, or at least the way that Tick is talking about it, like we don't trust this person to like guide us to where we need to go, but what happens along the way, we want to keep our eyes out. We're not just going to go in blindly like following them focused kind of thing. So I think I get where you're coming from though too, Truth.
Interesting.
We're getting sidetracked again.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It's fine.
Semantics. But I do understand what you're saying. I just think that maybe not mistrust, but like not fully trusting.
Not fully trusting, yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So somewhere in between there.
Not fully bought in.
Not fully bought in.
But again, that's just one member of the group. And to be honest, something that I probably intend on bringing up is we really don't know a whole lot about the group other than, I mean, just the group in general. And I think that may be something that's a selling point, where maybe it's time to sit down and talk to everyone face to face and get to know, pass the baton around the table and, play a game of icebreakers.
Yeah, it might help if you're going to continue being colleagues in the future. So I did want to ask, so Quinn sort of, well, it was at breakfast. Quinn sort of gathered everyone together and was like, I have a very important thing to tell everyone, relax. I want to know, like, what was Cynric's reaction, like internally in this moment? And like, what was he thinking? Was he thinking, well, we need to find a way to repair this relationship? Was he thinking, let's just kind of like step back and see how it goes? Like, what was his initial reaction?
My course of action is maybe we shouldn't be, necessarily working hand in hand, but we very much need to stay on parallel roads because at the end of the day, they're the only people that are trying to help us not be devoured by a dark god. And even though, should we separate our own ways, we're not doing anything to help that situation. We're relying on them to do it for us. So, I mean, I do think in character that we need to take a step back, both groups, because we tend to just bring out the worst in each other and travel, parallel roads until we can sit down and have that, discussion that puts us on the same road.
So Cynric would prefer they be more distant colleagues?
Allies, but maybe right now we would do more damage if we were face to face.
Interesting. So I'm also actually pretty curious about the meta of this whole situation because Lex and Lux Eterna have been the plot-giving NPCs. Like that's their function in the story, or has been so far. So I want to ask Ray, like, what would happen if the party decided they did not want to work with Lux Eterna at all? Would it be like when you kill a pivotal like NPC in the game and you have to restart, or would there be a way to work the story around that?
Yeah, I mean, like obviously the whole thing that I've like I made them as an assistance to the group. But over time it's felt like they've become more of like a crutch for the group. And there's like an expectation of these like just meta wise, well, these are like level 20 characters, so like they should just be able to like do whatever and like we could just call them whenever we need. And it's like, okay, yeah, meta, that, but like in reality, like they are also doing their own thing and have their own issues and are real people in this world dealing with a lot of shit. And they brought you into this to see if they could get extra help. But I've also noticed, like, there is, again, like, over the course of these 70, almost 5 episodes, there has been there has been a lot of butting with them and mistrust of them. And that's neither here nor there. Like, the player characters and the players themselves are allowed to, like that. I never want to bar them and say, like, well, you have to follow these people and trust them implicitly. But I've noticed that. And they're also, as experienced adventurers, like, yeah, they're also as experienced adventurers, they're observant and things like that, and they've noticed that there is just something not meshing with the groups, and just like they don't want to be, just like Campion's worry of like, hey, you're going to get us all killed at some point, they have the same worries with this group, and fairly, I think. So at this point, they're saying like, yeah, you're entrenched in this, but had I not brought you in, had I just saved your life and said, see you later, and let you go off on your own, you would have been none the wiser anyways. But you have information, and you can do with that information what you will. Rather than expect us to tell you where to go all the time and have you follow us, you're welcome to do your own research. If you don't trust us, if your group doesn't have inherent trust in us to get the job done and to make sure that we all don't die as a collective group, then do your own research. Go out in the world and figure it out. And that's the crux of this. And this is me as a DM giving the players freedom. Like, I don't want to railroad them into like being forced to work with this group that they are constantly butting heads with and having like negative interactions with. If that's the case, I don't want that to be forced on the players. So this is a very pivotal point. This is not what I was expecting at all for the campaign, but I'm willing to work with it and give the group the opportunity to truly decide whether they want to do it or not. So the answer is will they go find like if they don't repair this relationship, will they be going to the shackle next? I don't know. They're going to have to do their own research to figure out maybe where it is, to learn more about Tharizdun, to get all this information rather than being told by Lex and Fulton and Aaron and whoever what it is. If they choose to go with them, there has to be trust, and Lex and the group have to see it. There has to be some conviction in the group that they actually want to do this, and it's not just one or two of them wanting to do this because it ties into who they are and what they want to do, and the rest of them are just kind of like begrudgingly going along because it's like, oh, majority rules, so we'll just do it, when they know that like that's, especially in these bad situations, that's not going to cut it. Like, we have to rely on one another, so that's where they're coming from. And I wanted this moment because I want the players to have agency over how they choose for things to go. But no, it doesn't mean that like the campaign ends and like all their characters like go off and eventually die to Tharizdun and their souls get taken and the world ends or whatever, or Lux Eterna magically makes everything better. Like, I have all of these things going on in the background, and I know how things are going to play out if certain things happen and if certain things don't happen, and based on how the players interact with the world and their characters interact. But no, it would just take a different turn. And then again, I have no idea what their next move would be, because their next move has always been, the next major plot point with Lux Eterna. When they don't, if they choose not to have them, I'm going to have to, go off the book a little bit and try to tailor things to what they choose to do next. Whether that be, do they go to, the mission that they have from a Trill, or do they do something else? Do they choose to, do they choose to stay in the city for a bit longer and do research? I don't know. So yeah, I wanted this to feel like a point where they're the ones who are deciding the course of the story. I have given them guidance. They have options. Both options are exciting.
Yeah. Tick, do you think it's true that the party has been using Lux Eterna as a crutch?
Ever since the beginning.
Is it something you noticed early on? Like, talk to me about it.
Well, I mean, as soon as we got the little communicator device, it was one of those where it's like, we don't know what to do. Okay, well, I'm just going to press the button on this. And then it's, the next time,
The
well, we
phone
don't
a
know.
friend
We're going to
option.
press the button for this. So, I mean, yeah, it has become not contentious, but it's become a point where we do rely on them to kind of bail out of
Mhm.
situations as opposed to treating them as a resource in our own investigation. And I think that's the dynamic that kind of has to change with us. We need to, instead of looking at them as people to come into our rescue or to point us to a direction, we should be including them as far as collecting information because they have, seen stuff. They've experienced stuff that we don't know about. So I mean, we should be using their knowledge more so than we should be using their fighting prowess.
Okay.
And that's kind of why I'm on the that like decision of, okay, maybe we should jump on the parallel road and maybe we
Mhm.
should walk the railroad tracks while they walk the road, and meet up along the way to have
So
a
you
different understanding.
so you prefer for the shields not to travel with Lux Eterna to the next shackle, which is I believe what was gonna happen.
I mean, unfortunately, yeah, but I don't want it
Mhm.
to be a point where we're writing off this communication now, because I think if we do that, um, yeah, that'll probably be bad for some of us. More so than we're relying on other people to fix our problem for us. And
Mhm.
I know I won't appreciate that,
Okay.
at least me specifically.
Interesting. Well, everything's so pivotal these days.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I did get the impression that most of the party wanted to remain in contact with Lux Eterna, though,
Yeah.
for various reasons.
But it has to be
I,
kind of like
yeah.
an all, like the group, because they're a group. Like they
Mhm.
all have to be in it to win it, so to speak. Like it can't be like, Quinn and Perry really want to do this, and the other four are kind of like, Quinn and Perry are
Eh.
pushing for it, so we'll do that. Like Cynric can't be like, I'd rather not, but if
Mhm.
you're not going to listen to me, then I guess like they're going to notice that and they're going to be like, okay, guys, like, no, like you do your own thing. Like this doesn't mean that you're forever lost at sea and never gonna figure things out, but it just means that like we're not the ones that are going to be guiding you exactly where you need to
Mhm.
go and bringing you along on every mission we do because that synergy is not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like on a meta level, like you guys are still the main characters. You're gonna get the plot no matter what.
Exactly. Yeah. They're gonna get a plot, whether it's the exact plot that would have been. No, probably not, but
Mhm.
that's D&D. Like any decision they make can be the not the plot that I was expecting, which is what I love about D&D. It's a living, breathing story that changes,
Mhm.
unless you absolutely
Yeah.
try to force it into a slot, which I mean usually feels pretty bad. But yeah, this is exciting. The other thing I wanted was they've been constantly fighting. Like most of their challenges have been battles, tough battles, or skill challenges. This one is the players actually understanding that. Like, I wanted to have a challenge where the players actually have to understand their characters and their motivations and make a decision based on where they want this, like where they actually want to go, which I think is a little bit more exciting. It's a little bit of a different challenge than, I bust out my hammer and smite something, or I shoot my crossbow and the thing dies. This is a little bit more nuanced. So
Well, Tick, did you want to say something before?
No, I mean it's a forced character growth moment or
A
character
forced character.
acceptance moment.
Oh, time for a character arc or two or three or four or five. Um, awesome. So we have to move on soon, but I did want to ask before we did. So the party's kind of been, well, not shanghaied, but moved into a position where they're going to be, I think, going to some quarry and checking out some stuff for the Australian government. And I wanted to ask about how Cynric felt kind of running errands for Atril, because historically, Cindric's folks in Atril are not super friendly, as we found out when he first showed up, and everyone was like, oh.
Well, I mean, it's been a long time since I've been there. I've seen a lot of different
Mhm.
things in the world, and perceptions change when you are not in an area that is closed off to the world. So, I mean, there's a lot of growth that was already done as far as understanding different sides of the coin. So yeah, I mean, this is just another job at this point to clear Oriana's name.
Mhm.
So I mean that's kind of how I look at it.
So Cindric's just kind of being open-minded about it.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those where I rationalize that my character is seen enough with the group traveling the world, that not everyone that from is from a specific place is bad, if that makes sense.
But you are working for the government directly. So you're not working for an trillion citizen.
Yeah, again, not everyone that's from a specific location is bad.
But it's the government.
I
Like
understand.
that's not a person.
I understand, but we're also having a maid contacting Cade. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, even kind of my interest in Cade alone is that, his ideals could be something that helps us in the long run, should we ever find ourselves in need of an ally. I
We
mean,
were talking about that in one
so
of the previous episodes, I remember.
yeah, I mean, it's one of those where it's not a bad choice to be on good faith, good
Mhm.
relationships with all kinds of people. Um, to be honest, I don't think I would treat Cade any different than I would say, like, if we ran into Vicar again. I
Mhm.
mean, he's kind of maybe not the best person in the world, but again, might not be a bad person to be able to rely on in a situation where it's needed, as far as either getting information or having an allyship with.
Interesting. So there's an element of strategy there. And I think Sinner's right when he's thinking about that. This would be definitely a powerful ally to have. Um, cool beans. I was gonna ask something else. I forget now. Oh, it's a comment. I was gonna say I kind of do want to see Sinner and Kate having a conversation because they seem like they would get along.
I mean, it's one of those where I was thinking about it, and the way that he sees things, I
Hmm.
don't necessarily agree with, as far as like the whole one government by, their definition and their way of thinking.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, I see the potential for how strong of an ally that could potentially unite people of all different kinds in the event that something, big happened. So it's one of those where it's like, yeah, if I had to put my money into one person to ally with right now, it would probably be him.
Yeah, especially considering how big the thing that's coming is.
Exactly. And
War
it's not
makes for
something
strange
that
bedfellows.
we can just turn around and say, hey, by the way, this is kind of happening. So,
BT
and that's,
Help,
yeah, that
help.
exactly. That's why I think our relationship with Lux Eterna needs to be something that we're approaching with a different headspace. And that's kind of why I think maybe we should put the brakes on for a little bit, reevaluate what we're doing, and then catch back up instead of just jumping to a decision now.
Strategy. Speaking of jumping, we need to jump onto the topic for today. We've gone a little bit over. That's okay. So the topic for today is cooperative world building, which is the topic I've been looking forward to for a bit. So D&D is it's usually a world created primarily by the DM, but the players do have a really big influence on the world itself as well. So my first question is that like as DMs, how much do you like control your world? How much is it structured? How much is it rigid? And how much like do you allow the players to kind of weave that story with you?
I think you kind of have to have a backbone that's rigid. It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
writing an essay, in my opinion. You have a backbone, and that's like your outline, and that's rigid on what you want to do. But then everything else just kind of has to fall into place as your ideas are being formulated. But it's not just, you that's formulating those ideas, it's a group effort. Like, say your group wants to steal a bunch of horses. Well, now you got to find a way to blend that into your backbone without like completely destroying it, as far as like the general idea of what story you're trying to tell, if that makes sense. Probably a poor example, but
No, I think that makes sense. I like the essay metaphor. You could write a good essay about that.
yeah, yeah. 3.5 citing
3.5.
sources.
Well,
I
MLA.
I mean, most of the time you want to have like a world that the
Mhm.
players have an understanding of building. Although you could like build the world with them if you're like, hey, what kind of person do you want to play? What kind of culture do they want to be? I when I designed Tanya, I had this general idea of like what the universe was, what the makeup was,
Mhm.
the various areas, but a lot of the locations and pieces of the world and how they turned out was built based on characters' backstories, which I love. I love taking these things and like having my initial thoughts change on what this is going to be and who this
Mhm.
person might be and how they might interact with the world. Um, so yeah, I think generally a DM comes in with something to give to their players so that they have something to build off of. But most DMs will let the players kind of run with it and then
Mhm.
find a way to like weave that story into the world to make it feel more organic and more robust. So
Awesome. What about as players? Like, do you like the sense of having a world which is really fleshed out, which like exists outside of you, or do you like the sensation of having a world unfurl around you, like being able to see your influence in the story? Or do you like both?
I think it depends on the story you're trying to tell. And I kind of equate the scenario, and I'm going to kick myself in the rear end for saying this, but to like some of the more popular MMOs, like say
Mhm.
World of Warcraft versus, like say Final Fantasy and the way that they tell their story. Like, for example, for World of Warcraft, they're telling the story where you are the sole person in the world that revolves around you. Whereas the other, the latter is telling a story where you're a very powerful cog in the machine, but
Mhm.
you're a cog in the machine. So it's a world that's already there and you're just a part of it. I, both have their places and both are strong, storytelling methods. I prefer the latter, whereas, you fit into the world because to me
Mhm.
that's more interesting, um, but not necessarily opposed to the other, depending on the circumstance.
um, for me it depends. Like I one of the things I don't really like is it's hard for me to come into like established universes, like really established universes. Like
Mhm.
it's hard for me to like play in like a Star Wars game or like even the traditional D&D setting of like Forgotten Realms and stuff like that just because like there's just so much already there and it feels like hard to like get away from like what's like canon in the story
Mhm.
and I find like oftentimes like if a DM does something and it's like goes against, even though you're allowed to do that and that's what D&D is all about, a lot of people will kind of like feel awkward or like weird about it.
Mhm.
So I generally like coming into more like open, less sort of rigid guidelines of like what a world is and more homebrewed content. Um, but in terms of like I do like to build the story, but I also like to see the DM and like what they kind of have planned and work with kind of what they give me and build off of that. So it's like kind of like a little bit of both. But
Mhm.
I'm not the type of player that expects like the world to like I don't know if anyone's like here's read like Wheel of Time, but I don't expect like my character to be like a Taveran where like I expect the world and the threads to like shift around every decision I make, and therefore like everything I do has to have like some major effect or like drastically change the world. Um,
Mhm.
but I do like to have like those little moments where I can go off and like do whatever and do something fun and funky. But I do also like to follow like a DM's kind of story that they've laid out because I like to see what story they're trying to tell and kind of help them tell it.
Cool. So as DMs, like, what is the process of using like character backstories to weave those into your world and to sort of like not inform, but to like mutate the world you've already come up with most of the time.
I mean, you can go first.
Um, um, well, the thing is like when a player creates a character, they're really giving like something of themselves and something that they want to see, generally in the story that you're collectively telling together. And so for me as a DM, it's very important to weave it in, make it feel organic, and make it feel like what they added um is not just being accessed or used because it feels like it has to be because they made this character and therefore like, oh, we have to hit this backstory plot point. I like to see like based on what I'm thinking about for the wider world arc, it's like, oh, this would be perfect in this part, and it will feel very organic for these two characters to for their stories to intertwine when they never, these two random people who may have never met under any other circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow there's something interwoven between what they're looking for, or why they're out in the world traveling the way that they are. But yeah, I think players kind of like more so than even some of the main story, a lot of players want to see what those backstory moments
Mm-hmm.
are because they want to complete their character story beyond the main story of the campaign or whatever. If you're going to fight the evil devil overlord, they still want to know like what happened to my missing family that I left back in my village, that was attacked by demons or whatever. Um, and I feel like most players are very invested in that because for them that's like true growth of their character. And if that doesn't get completed, it feels like they missed a part of the story. And so as a DM, I think it's like it's imperative to kind of like weave that in and make it feel like it is a natural part of the story, whether you weave it into your main plot point or have it just be an organic sort of side quest that the characters end up going on, to learn more about their character or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you almost have to balance, how many ever characters there are plus one story whenever you're kind of doing something like that. And I mean, personally, I kind of like the idea more of like character stuff being the side quest because not all characters, when they create backstories, necessarily have a backstory to see something to fruition, but more so create a backstory to explain what they're doing in a place and time. And when you have that, I guess, like vague of a backstory, it's kind of hard to incorporate that into a further story. And again, sometimes the players are okay with that. They don't necessarily want to have that development, that personal
Mm-hmm.
development, and instead want that character to be more integral to the overarching story and not kind of get lost on, well, this is happening at home, so we need to
Mm-hmm.
go take care of that, if that kind of makes sense. So, I mean, you kind of have to balance what your players' expectations are for the story
Mm-hmm.
versus, how it necessarily fits in. And, it's usually easier if they're side quests, but it sometimes is a lot more fun when they're all interconnected because that
Yeah.
way, once you're done with that story, you have the motivation to say, all right, well, I'm going to continue on because now that that's complete, I have more time to invest into this. And, during the course of that investigation, this is still a bigger thread that, is still connected to what that was. So even though everyone's safe, we still got to go, keep going. The story is not over. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also largely like a thing of DM preference, whether you want to put in the effort to interweave everyone's backstories into the main plot, or if you want to have little side quests. It's a bit what you're comfortable with and what you think would work best for your plot. And read what Tick was saying about like some characters not really wanting, or some players not really wanting their backstories explored that much. I think that's something probably people should talk about more, but don't often, um, in like the initial talks, because I don't know if you guys get the impression of this, but I've always gotten the impression that it's sort of a expectation at the table that these backstories will be addressed like in a big way.
I
I
mean,
mean,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say they they're individual plot points for a character. So when you go to a table as a character, you're not going there as, a whole overarching story. You're going there as a character. So, I mean, even if you're not thinking about it, people do want their story completed as opposed to necessarily the whole campaign. But yeah, it's I guess that's kind of my answer.
Yeah, I
That makes
mean,
sense.
I don't think it's like implicitly expected. And I think that there are like a lot of things that you can do with characters where certain plot points, like you complete certain things for the character, but even when the campaign is over, they would still have more to do on their own, or there are still threads that are like kind of left in the wind for them to explore later on, or to that are kind of like left drifting. But I agree. Like that's generally something that you talk with your players and ask them if they want this to be used in the story. And that's something that I've asked all of the players. Like I specifically talked to Laura when I was like thinking about, I mean, I didn't tell her what I was going to do, but I gave her kind of a heads up of like, hey, I have some really interesting things that I want to do. Are you game? And she was like, yeah, I'm super game. Same with like Chad. I was like, okay, I have a really good idea for this, but like, are you in? And he's like, yeah, I want to tell this story. And so I think if we like never addressed the Shadowlands and like kind of left that drifting, he might be, as a player, like feeling a little bit bereft of like, man, I really wanted to see that through. But I do agree, there are some players who are like, yeah, I just wanted to make the rogue who's super emo, his family died, and he's been on the street, and he lives that way, and he doesn't care, and he came into this group of people, and maybe at first he didn't really care about them, but it was like allyship of convenience, and now he actually cares about the group, and he just wants to go and see and continue to adventure with them. And that's fine.
That
you
could
also play that type
of
growth. But I'm saying that's and it is, but it's like that is fine if you don't want to address like what happened in the past or any kind of like current threads that your character has. You are welcome to do that. And I think that is something a DM should talk to with their player to make sure like, hey, do you actually care about this? Is this a story you want to tell, or is this kind of something that you just want to be left in the past and you just want to focus on moving forward?
Yeah, it's really it's a play style thing, I think. A lot of things are play style things. Lovely. So here's something that I've seen people like talking about online. Some DMs, like we had our session zero episodes, so we talked about those, but some DMs will use like a session zero as a chance to sketch out a world together with their players. Have you ever done something like this? Would you ever want to?
It's my understanding that's kind of what the session zero is supposed to do. It's supposed to like, be that introduction for you to the world and to see how that's going to kind of like commingle and co-mesh as, groups and characters versus, what you kind of had in mind with the world.
I would be happy to do that. I have done a couple of session zeros that are like that, where the players are helping build the world. I didn't really do that with Tanya, only because like this was like the first time I was ever like streaming something, and I kind of wanted to make sure like everything was like cohesive and it wasn't like be pulling everything out of my ass and like trying to figure it out all the while trying to figure out how to stream and make everything work. But it is something that I'm like 100% willing to do and happy to build like alongside players. It's also though hard because like a session zero like that takes a few hours, and maybe it's more than just session zero. Maybe it's session 0.1 to session 1 kind of thing. Like maybe there's like 10 session zeros to really do that. And to have everyone like build their characters, because like I've actually been in groups where it's like, okay, build the world, build the characters, what are your interrelationships between the characters, and then the players actually talk to one another and talk about how they know one another or how they don't know one another, or where they've been traveling or what they've been doing and how they found themselves in this place, and it like comes together a lot more, so that like initial meeting where all the group is together in one place is a lot smoother. But again, that takes time. And like the other hard thing is like finding the time of getting everyone together to do that beforehand and to spend like hours on end like figuring that all out, because it's not simple. But I'm totally for it.
Yeah, it does seem like it would be kind of a big commitment, but it seems like you come up with something really cool.
Probably, yeah.
It's interesting how you mentioned like the players talking amongst themselves to establish relationships like before the first session. So I remember we did that for the Halloween episode last year because of the one shot, and we were like, okay, well, we need interesting character dynamics, and they need to be in place before the one shot starts. So I really liked that. I liked talking to the other characters and be like, okay, well, how did we know each other? Why would these two people ever meet? I think it added like a new interesting dimension to the one shot. That's mostly off topic.
No, I think it's great, and I think it is part of the shared world building, because like you guys for that one shot, you were building the world around what this detective agency was and how you would all come to be there, and like how you fit in and what your specialties were, and that kind of stuff. And I think in those situations where it's not just like four random strangers meet in a bar, don't know anything about each other, and then are put in this like situation where like a big bar fight breaks up and now they're stuck together because the guard is coming after them and they have to like all
thrown in jail or whatever.
I think that's like a great way to establish dynamics. And sometimes it's like it's fun to already have relationships in a game, and I do like that. But yeah, it just takes time, so it's dependent on like player commitment and stuff like that.
Yeah. Actually, was that a thing with Cynric and Dobby? Because they had known each other prior to the beginning.
It's very hard to sometimes create that dynamic, not to cut you off.
Yeah, but I just wanted to know if you and Jay had like talked about that before the beginning of the show to like establish that dynamic.
I'm laughing because we talked about that a lot, and we talked to Serenity, and we were told, that doesn't work, try again. And then we talked about it more. It's
a process.
Well, they had some like
weird stuff.
Like to be fair, like I am all for like fun and hijinks, but I'm also trying to tell like a serious story. If we were just trying to like play like clown car D&D, I would be all for it. But I was like, this is gonna be a pretty serious story, and like some of the stuff you're doing is like really, really weird. And there was also some asks in there where I was like, that wouldn't make sense at all for your characters like to have or to be doing. But we did like talk back and forth, and I was like, okay, yes, this makes sense. Yes, you can have been a part of that. Yes, you would know like X, Y, and Z things in the world. You would know about these gangs. You would know about this city. You would know about all of these kinds of things.
And I mean, not to be too spoilery, but that could have all been a moot point, because I mean, Dobby about bit the dust in session 0, if I remember correctly. I don't know if that I should say that, but
oh yeah, he went down, but he wasn't gonna die. He wasn't gonna die.
No one dies in session 0. Imagine if you died.
I know. Imagine a DM like being like session 0 and then being like, oh yeah, sorry, you're dead. Make a new character. Like, no, most DMs are not gonna do that.
At the time, it was like, no, that can't happen. But looking back
he did
now,
do something
I
strange. He like
humorous.
put ball bearings on the ground and then like slipped on them himself or something like that. And then the thing attacked him, and I was like, oh, that's great. Okay. But yeah.
Looking back now, it's kind of funny. I'm not gonna lie. But
yeah, they did establish dynamics for their duo.
Fun times, Rick Dobby. We have time for one more question before the night's up. We all turn back into pumpkins. So real quick, where is the difference? There's a difference, obviously, but you can have like character backstory woven into your plot, as we've discussed quite a bit. But what about like kind of characters building the world around them, like adding sort of a weird little improv-y not mechanic, but a thing where like, is that something people can do in your games? Usually that's something you'd like to happen when characters are like, or when players are like, well, what if there was this library in my hometown? Or what if this thing worked this way? Or I would know about this, so I'm going to tell you how this works. Or I know about this in characters, so I'm going to tell you.
Not allowed. No one can tell me anything. No, I love it. I love it.
If nothing.
If they've got like an idea, and this has happened, I think, a couple of times with with Laura and Chad, where they've been like, well, could like my town probably would have been like this, and I was like, yeah, your town, whatever you want to name it, whatever you want to like call it, like you tell me how you want to have established the like all the relationships they had there. And it's the same like if they if they go to a place and they're like, is there a barber here? I'm like, yeah, sure. You want to get your hair cut? Yeah. Is there a tailor here? Of course. Why not? Like it's not something that I naturally put in because I have you have no idea how your players are going to interact with the world. As long as it makes sense, like feasibly makes sense, I have no problem with it. It's the same with like Campion being like, I want to invent a grappling gun. Okay, let's do some checks, and like if it works out, we'll see like how this goes, and we'll see like how things work out and what type of like balanced item we can make for this, and have some fun with it. Like he's an inventor. I mean, he created this like arcane dog thing that he can keep building, even after it's destroyed. So should he be able to invent other things? Of course. So yeah, within reason, I of course will allow players to mold the world the way that they see fit and create things. And if they ever have questions about things that they want to like add in, no problem. It's just I obviously like as a DM, you also have to balance like is what they're asking for something that's going to bite you in the ass later on, because now they're actually asking to build what is considered a magical item from mundane components in 5 minutes before they go into like the next dungeon. And like, is that going to be allowed? Because that could really mess with like game mechanics and stuff like that. Or if they're like, yeah, I want like a Candyland tower popping out of the ground in a trill in Riverend that, the nice little witch lives in. It's like, probably not. Like that's probably not going to
a little bit too far.
Yeah.
Maybe if you get a bag of beans, something like that happens. Maybe. But that could have other ramifications.
But again, yeah, as long as it's within reason and the players can do it, it's the same within battle. Like if they're like, I want to like parkour off this table and like flip around, let's do an acrobatics check. See how well that goes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. It has to be within reason. Like even if someone creates like say like his grappling gun, for example. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't be opposed to say like if he puts a vial of like what is it, the alchemist fire inside the claw of the hook and shoots that at something, but that's only a one-time thing. I mean, you're obviously not going to have that back at the end of next turn, and chances are that's going to be done because it's a grapple hook attached to a rope, so you're going to waste a whole nother turn just to pull it back, and then probably another turn to reload it, and then probably another turn to put another, item on it. So, I mean, it's one of those where if it's a one-shot thing, then maybe that's kind of different. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be stuff within reason. And just because it's, got to be within reason doesn't mean it can't be a little fun either.
Exactly.
I think that is the essence of D&D. It's like you think of a wild thing, then you put like restraints on it.
Yeah, and that's generally what
and workable. Yeah.
That's what a DM does, right? Is like, okay, probably not, but how about if it's like this? And then it's like the barter system or whatever, like or like what you do with when they go to like a merchant and they're like, I'll give you $750, 600, $650. Okay, yeah, it's exactly. It's like the haggle of like, I want this major thing, probably not going to get that. The DM goes like too conservative, the player renegotiates. Yeah, it's fun, and that's what D&D is all about, and that's how it becomes a collective story. Each person gets to have their input in what goes on.
Awesome. And that's a great place to end. Thank you. Anyway, thank you guys so much for coming on the show on this lovely Tuesday evening. Thank you to everyone who's watching for tuning in once again. Tune in on Friday for the next episode of Roll for Damage, where exciting stuff always happens. So I assume it'll happen once again. Then tune in on Tuesday. Well, we'll talk about all the exciting stuff that happened on Friday. It is a ongoing cycle. We are a snake eating its own tail. Metaphorically. Thank you.
Are we?
Sure. Metaphorically. Metaphorically.
We are kind of spinning in circles, but hey.
I was going to expand the metaphor, but we do need to close out for the night. Check out our store. We've got stuff. Check out our Patreon. We've got other stuff, both of which are worth buying. I have a t-shirt, which is very cool, and I control the Patreon, so I know what cool stuff is on there. Check out our Twitter. Are we doing our art crawl?
Yeah, we're still doing it. So we have like the music, we have art, we have lots of stuff.
We are on our 3rd week of Art Crawl and going strong. Please come check out the art from these amazing artists and the music from these amazing composers who work with us. We're really excited about all of it, and we think everyone should see because it's great. Check out our YouTube. We have the backlog of all of our episodes. Check out our Twitch. We have some little snippies, and also our most recent episodes up on there. If you prefer watching on Twitch, check out our podcast, which you can get wherever podcasts are podcasted. Chad works very hard on it. I'm trying to remember to call it out every week. Thank you to Sunbird and Lady Meows for doing our logo and our music. We love them both very much. And we love you guys. I hope you all have a great night.
And join our Discord too.
See you later.
And
have a good
night.
Discord
too.
See you next time.